Welcome back. Now, the recently concluded World Hydrogen Summit and exhibition took place at Rotterdam, Ahoy, Netherlands from the 13th to the 15th of this month. The event brought together governments and companies representing various stages of the supply chain. The main objective was to advance the industry and ensure that hydrogen plays a crucial role in the energy transition. Joining us for a debriefing is James Mnyupe, the Green Hydrogen Commissioner, who was part of the Namibian delegation at the summit. A very good evening, James. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. What were the main highlights of the World Hydrogen Summit, especially regarding advancements in hydrogen technology and global adoption?
Sure. I mean, there was like 15,000 people who apparently attended the summit from more than 100 different countries. So, I mean, that in itself was quite a bit of a highlight. I think last year we had like 10,000 people. So a 50% increase in attendance was quite something. And then really, you had either companies like ThyssenKrupp Nucera showcasing their latest technology in terms of their latest alkaline electrolyzers. But you also got, for example, various countries showcasing their own hydrogen programs. I mean, one that really stood out for us, for example, was Oman. Oman just sort of finished their second round of tenders, and they're sort of now developing 8 hydrogen projects. Right. So it was really a combination between countries, Canada, South Korea, South Africa was there, and companies such as ThyssenKrupp and Vision and others. And of course, you got port terminals like the Port of Rotterdam was there as well, really trying to attract various producers of molecules to be shipping their products to the port. So very interesting from that perspective. And then, of course, we got various policy updates. For example, the European Commission announced the successful completion of their tender, where they basically completed a tender of various auctions in Europe for hydrogen providers who were bidding to provide hydrogen to Europe at a specific price. So it was quite an interesting mix of various events that were happening.
Interesting. Now, James, how do you assess Namibia's role in the World Hydrogen Summit? In what initiatives or strategies did Namibia present to the hydrogen economy? Now, have you mentioned just a few countries that you just mentioned there?
I think our role was twofold, maybe even more. So really, it was showcasing what projects we have in Namibia. So, you know, whether it was Dalres that had a stand there, HDF also had a presence there, and those companies were showcasing what they were doing in Namibia, and obviously they were looking for, you know, either investors to join them in that journey, or you know, service providers, equipment providers to provide a specific parts of the supply chain. But the other, of course, was for the Namibia Green Hydrogen Program to say, look, we have these 9 projects in Namibia, but actually we're looking to develop new ones. And so on the Tuesday afternoon, actually at 1 o'clock, we showcased the fact that Namibia is going to be announcing a market sounding activity on the 29th and the 30th of May, where we'll be sharing with the market our ideas of what the next RFP, RFP2 and RFP3 could look like. RFP2 is basically us providing an opportunity for, you know, somebody to develop a project below Hyphen in the Ludwig area. And at the same time, RFP3 is looking for us to provide the next opportunity for somebody to develop a project in the Irongo region in the Central Valley, and for us to also provide an opportunity for the hydrogen backbone in that valley to be potentially designed and constructed. So that was a very interesting and exciting part of our presentation there. And of course, our president came to visit both of those stands, and that obviously brought a lot of visitors and attention, and he was a fantastic ambassador for the program and for the hydrogen ambition in Namibia in general.
And were there any notable partnerships or collaborations announced at the summit that could potentially benefit Namibia's hydrogen sector?
Sure. So, I mean, one in particular was an MOU that was signed between the Namibian Green Hydrogen Program the Western Cape Development Agency called Westgro, and the Northern Cape Development Agency called NEDA, and then Gasuni, which is a big constructor of hydrogen pipelines. And basically, those three agencies, together with Gasuni, have agreed to do a study on whether we can build a hydrogen pipeline that'll go from Namibia to South Africa, all the way from sort of Lüderitz to Buchu Bay in the Northern Cape to Saldanha in the Western Cape, with a T-junction that goes all the way to Secunda in Gauteng to Sasol. And the idea is if that's feasible and there's enough demand from, for example, Sasol or even the Saldanha steel mill, could Namibia actually be exporting some hydrogen to South Africa and not just to the world through the port, in order to decarbonize South Africa, but also in order to diversify our customer base? So this is a study that we'll be doing with Gasuni, a pre-feasibility study. We expect actually the early results of that study to be coming out by the end of the year. So that was one sort of interesting formal partnership that we've agreed to work on. But also other conversations happened. I think Dowres met two very interesting investors. Mm-hmm. One in particular is already investing in Namibia, and they were looking at whether they could partner with Dowres some more. So those conversations were going on. Of course, Numport and Port of Rotterdam also sort of really were deepening their potential collaboration for the development of the Port of Lüderitz as well.
What were the main challenges discussed at the summit regarding the widespread implementation of hydrogen technology, and how do you think that Namibia can address similar challenges in its own hydrogen journey?
Yeah, so I think, the world is definitely acknowledging that, there is a bit of a, what would I call it? A lot more people are thinking about how do we actually design these offtake support mechanisms? So there's products that we're going to be making, especially the molecules, cost a bit more than the gray equivalent, than the equivalent that is very carbon intensive. And so there was a lot of conversation at a policy level on, if the EIB, for example, put aside 800 million euros for this hydrogen tender I was talking about in Europe, and now the conversation was swinging to how do we do that cross-border? So the Namibian government, certainly we engage in conversations with the EU Commission on that particular aspect. Other than that, I think a lot of the other things were obviously the big projects are now looking to be a bit more modular, so you can build them in a few more stages versus one large project at a go. That was a big part of the conversation. But all in all, everyone was saying, these particular ideas are possible. One of the key things as well was using some of the molecules in country and not just exporting the molecules through ammonia. And from that perspective, Namibia was able to showcase how we wanted to use the hydrogen to make direct reduced iron. And so we showcased the high iron video during our presentation on Tuesday afternoon. And I think that particular initiative was receiving a lot of warm reception, because that meant we would produce the hydrogen in the Erongo Valley, but we would also use it in the Erongo Valley, and the export wouldn't be a molecule, it would be direct reduced iron. So now the key challenge there was, look, the initial shipment of 15,000 tons wasn't going to be so large. So could we get an appropriate vehicle or vessel to actually offtake that green iron? So, the challenges are different in nature, but it's good that all of us are working together to try and problem solve for the sparking really of a new industry in Namibia.
Well, James, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us this evening about the experience from the World Hydrogen Summit. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. And by the way, we're continuing the conversations here in Copenhagen, in Denmark, where, we were presenting what we're doing here at the Mars McKinney Moller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping. And now we're busy modeling those green maritime corridors, which essentially take the hydrogen, or at least the green iron, all the way from the Erongo region to Europe. And so the Danish here, with their shipping companies like Maersk, are quite keen to now help us move those products to Europe. So the conversation continues here. But thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and all the best for that experience. All right, we continue with more interviews here on the Daily Roundup right after a short break.